This is a revision video for the themes in an Inspector Calls by J.B. Priestley for the GCSE English Literature exam. Okay, so as in all my other videos, I will always start off with the central message, what the play is all about, what the text is all about, and I think that this play is a morality play. It's there to provide moral instruction to the audience, and in particular this one is promoting a need for social responsibility, the need to look to the needs of others rather than just thinking about ourselves. So the themes, the ideas that are incorporated into the text, obviously responsibility is right up there at the top. We have class, youth and age, and capitalism and socialism, and I would think about all of these themes as a conflict. So the conflict between social responsibility and individualism, the conflict between the classes, working class and the upper classes, the conflict between generations, so the youth and older generations, and the conflicts between the ideologies of capitalism and socialism. So starting with responsibility, this is perhaps the most important theme of the play, and you may have noticed that the words responsible and responsibility are the most frequent. They appear the most spoken by various characters throughout. We also see that the play presents different views of responsibility. So we have the Burlings with their idea about who is responsible for each other, and then we have the inspector and some of the younger Burlings as well with what they think. There is this contrast between the Burlings, what they think of individualism, and the collective responsibility, so either thinking for yourself or thinking for others. The individualism, if you've seen my video on the characters, you will see that I mentioned that Burling and Mrs. Burling are presented quite unsympathetically. They are shown to be narrow-minded and opinionated, and with them representing individualism, that in itself is being shown as narrow-minded, whereas collective responsibility is more progressive. As I said in the characters video, the play hasn't been written for one character. There isn't a main character in this. There are some characters which have more lines, and we have Edna, who is nothing more than a dramatic device just to show the wealth of the family, but all of the characters within are just as important, and this is to show that no character is more important than the other, but also no person is more important than the other. Now, in terms of class, Mr. Burling, he's a self-made man, as I said, and upwardly mobile, so he comes from more humble origins and has made a success of his life through hard work and determination. And it's important to stress that Priestley isn't critical of that attitude. He's more critical at the fact that, as I said in my characters video, Mr. Burling has no empathy for the working classes, where perhaps he should have the most understanding for the working classes, having belonged to them in his earlier years. The Burlings, they are presented as quite arrogant. So the upper classes in the play are presented as being arrogant and concerned just with reputation and social standing. Mr. Burling is concerned about his knighthood, and their Mr. and Mrs. Burling and Gerald, for that matter, who of course is part of the upper classes as well. When they think that the inspector is a fake, they're just relieved that they've avoided a scandal rather than actually reflected on the attitudes that they express towards others. Eva Smith, she's not on the stage, but as I said in my characters video, she's still very important, and the fact that she doesn't appear on stage, the fact that she is not on there physically, shows that the working classes don't have a voice and that they are misrepresented in society. The inspector, he's shown to be completely classless. There is no suggestion as to which class he belongs. We also see lots of prejudice within the play, characters making judgments about others, particularly Eva Smith, on class, and as I said in my characters video, Eva Smith, when we hear about her through the other characters, we see that actually her actions contradict that. So the upper classes are making these judgments on the working classes, and actually they're seen to be unfounded. Now, in terms of youth and age, there is this stark contrast between the generations of the family. If you consider Mr. and Mrs. Burling on the one hand, and Eric and Sheila on the other. The older Burlings, are much more stubborn and narrow-minded in their view of the world and their attitudes, whereas the younger characters, Eric and Sheila, they're more malleable, they're adaptable, and they certainly are the ones more affected by the inspector. Now, as a result of this, the difference in the generations, I think it shows, Priestley showing that the more traditional ideologies are actually old-fashioned, and that change lies with the younger people. And I think that there's the play ends with a bit of hope with this matter, with Eric and Sheila actually quite remorseful about what they have done, and it shows this promise of change, and it shows a hope that we are able, by looking at ourselves, we are able to create this change. Now, capitalism and socialism, these are two political and economical ideologies. Now, your teacher should have taught you this, or you should be aware that in capitalism, we live in a capitalist society at the moment. It's the free market where companies are free to trade, and it prides itself on competition. It prides itself on independence from the state, and that everyone has the opportunity through hard work and determination to be successful. Socialism, on the other hand, it takes everything back to the state, where actually for a society to work, it needs to be governed by the state, and kind of looks more at dependence on the state. So people who are unable to look after themselves properly through being out of work, through injury or old age, then the state will look after them. Is pretty much where we get the welfare states from the socialist governments, Clement Attlee's socialist government after the Second World War, 1945 to 51, I think. So where we get the NHS and the benefit system that we have today. So capitalism, with all that in mind, it's presented pretty much as individualism. I think there's a bit of a harsh view of capitalism. Capitalism and socialism have their equal merits, and in Britain we kind of have this balance between, certainly today, we have this balance between the two. The capitalist ideology, it's shown to be self-centered, and because of that, it's flawed. If we just looked after ourselves, then society would crumble. And the principal message, as I said, of the play promotes this idea of social responsibility. The characters' actions, in many ways, represent the capitalist nations in the early 20th century. This thinking just for out of greed and competition, and we saw the two massive world wars in the first part of the 20th century. Remember, this play is was first performed in 1946, and it was set in 1912. So that's a massive moment in the history of humankind, and it's really looking back and reflecting on that time. And we see these characters on stage, kind of representative of what happened. The inspector, as this classless character, he is the voice of social conscience. He is the one that comes on and says, we are members of one body. And he delivers Priestley's message, and he kind of delivers essentially a socialist message, that everyone needs to look after each other in order for a society to survive.